Just after midnight on 25 August 2026, a Ukrainian long-range strike drone is running east across occupied Luhansk at low altitude, engine buzzing under the cloud, heading for a set of dish antennas that Russia parked 120 kilometers behind the front line because 120 kilometers was supposed to be enough. Those dishes are the reason Ukrainian units in that sector keep losing their satellite link at the worst possible moment. The drone has one pass. Everything between it and that lot is designed to make sure it never gets there. It is not a quadcopter. Nothing with 4 battery-powered motors reaches this far. This is a fixed-wing machine with a small piston engine in the tail, a wingspan of a few meters, a warhead in the nose measured in tens of kilograms, and no pilot watching a live feed. It was given coordinates on the ground hours ago, and it is flying itself. That distinction matters more than it sounds, because the thing waiting at the end of this route is built to break the link between a drone and the sky above it. The target sits on a hardstand at the edge of an industrial lot, the kind of place that used to be a machine yard and now holds military vehicles under netting. 6 wheeled trailers in a loose arc. On each of them, dish antennas mounted in pairs, aimed up at nothing a human eye could see. Ukraine's general staff would later name it as a Peresvet-M electronic warfare complex. The name gets confused constantly. This is not a laser. There is no beam here. Nothing that glows, nothing that burns. Peresvet-M is the label that has attached itself to a family of Russian jamming complexes better known by the workshop name Valna Kupol Garant. Wave, Dome, Guarantor. 12 dishes on 6 trailers, and all they do is scream. What they scream at is Starlink. Russia built these trailers because of what Ukrainian brigades do with the sky. They run their command traffic, their reconnaissance video, their artillery correction, and increasingly their drone relay links through low-orbit satellite terminals. Small flat dishes on a truck roof or a dugout parapet talking to satellites a few hundred kilometers up. That network was never designed for war. It was designed to give a farmhouse in Montana broadband. But it is fast, it is hard to cut, and there are thousands of satellites, so you cannot shoot it down. So Russia stopped trying to shoot it down and started trying to shout over it. The terminal talks up to the satellite on a narrow slice of radio spectrum around 14 gigahertz. Every one of those dishes on those 6 trailers points at that slice and floods it with noise. Not a signal. Noise, enough raw radio garbage on the exact frequencies the terminal needs, and the satellite can no longer pick the terminal's whisper out of the roar. One complex can smother roughly 8 of those channels at once and blanket about 20 square kilometers of ground. Inside that footprint, terminals do not degrade politely. They just stop. A Simferopol firm builds them in occupied Crimea. Each complex costs somewhere in the range of $1.5 to $2 million, and Russia has been pushing them forward all summer, parking them near rail junctions, fuel depots, energy infrastructure, and command posts. A Ukrainian drone crew working a sector under one of these does not get a warning. They get a picture, and then no picture, and then a machine somewhere out over enemy ground that is no longer talking to anyone. That is what those dishes were doing on the night of 24 August. And that is why a drone was already in the air. The complex on that lot is built to jam a satellite uplink. The machine coming to hit it does not use one. It never had a Starlink terminal, never had a video downlink, never had an operator holding sticks. It navigates on satellite positioning plus an inertial unit, running a preloaded string of waypoints, and it will keep flying that string whether anyone is listening or not. The most expensive counter-drone asset in the sector, and its primary weapon has no grip on the specific machine coming for it. That does not mean the flight is easy. It means the danger comes from somewhere else. The first wall is the route in. A drone at cruise altitude over occupied Luhansk is visible to Russian surveillance radar from a long way out, and once it is seen, the whole air defense chain gets warmed up. So the flight profile stays low enough that the curve of the Earth hides it from anything watching from the ground, because a radar antenna sitting on a mast 20 meters up cannot see through a hill or over the horizon. Every meter of altitude, the drone gives up buys it kilometers of cover. Every meter it gives up also brings it closer to power lines, to spoil heaps, to communication towers stitched along the roads of the Donbas that do not show up on the maps a route planner works from. It flies the low line anyway. There is no version of this mission at 3,000 meters. The next wall is already spread across the rear areas of Luhansk, a belt of jamming, not the Starlink complex. Different systems, older, cruder, aimed at satellite navigation itself. Truck-mounted stations that broadcast across the navigation bands over a radius of tens of kilometers, and they come in two kinds that are not the same thing at all. The crude one is jamming, raw noise on the navigation frequencies. The receiver stops getting a fix and reports that it is blind, which is bad but honest. The machine knows. The dangerous one is spoofing. Instead of noise, the station transmits counterfeit satellite signals correctly formatted. Correctly timed, subtly wrong. The receiver locks onto them, does its math, and produces a position that is confidently precisely false. Nothing errors out, nothing flags. A drone can fly for 20 minutes on a lie and put its warhead into an empty field beside a road, and the crew who launched it will never know why. Blinding, the machine notices. Lying, it does not. Somewhere over the middle third of the route, the navigation picture starts coming apart. The satellite fix drops, returns, drops, then returns with numbers that do not match the last few seconds of flight. And here the second system on board earns its place, the inertial unit. 3 gyroscopes, 3 accelerometers, a small dense package that has been counting every turn, every acceleration, every climb and drop since the launch rail. It does not need the sky. It knows where the drone is because it has kept track of every meter it has traveled from a point on the ground where somebody wrote down the coordinates by hand. When the satellite says the drone is one place, and the inertial unit's dead reckoning says it is 400 meters away from there, the flight computer has to choose. It throws the satellites out. From that point, the machine is navigating on memory, and inertial navigation has one enemy, which is time. Tiny errors in each measurement stack minute by minute, meters becoming tens of meters becoming hundreds. On a short hop, the drift is nothing. On a run of more than 100 kilometers through a spoofed corridor, drift is the entire question. The drone is now racing its own accumulating error toward a target it has to hit within meters. On a lot where the difference between the trailers and an empty concrete apron is the width of a football pitch. That race is the whole rest of the flight. Meanwhile, on the lot, the crew is doing what crews do at 1 in the morning. The complex draws heavy power, so a generator is running somewhere in the arc of trailers, throwing heat that any thermal sensor in the sky would read like a lamp in a dark room. The dishes are radiating. That is the second thing about a jammer that its operators never quite learn. To work at all, it must transmit, and transmitting is announcing. A radio reconnaissance flight does not need to see a jammer to find it. It only needs to hear it. Take a bearing from 2 positions, cross the lines, and there it is on the map, precise to a building. The complexes are supposed to move. Set up, radiate, tear down, relocate. 6 trailers with a dozen dishes and heavy cabling do not tear down quickly, and a crew that has been running a stable footprint for days over a sector that keeps needing coverage develops a very human relationship with the phrase, "We will move it tomorrow." The last 20 kilometers are the ones that matter. Approaching a defended point target, the drone descends further. Below 100 meters, the ground clutter behind it makes it a miserable radar contact, and Russian short-range air defense in the deep rear is thinner than the maps suggest, because the good systems, the Panzer vehicles and the Tor tracks are needed forward where the assaults are. What sits over a rear area electronic warfare site is usually a duty machine gun position, a couple of crews with small arms and an assumption. At around 10 kilometers out, the low buzz of a small piston engine becomes audible on the ground on a still night. Not loud. A lawnmower somewhere behind the tree line. On the lot, someone hears it and does what people do, which is stop, tilt their head, and try to work out whether it is getting closer or going past. There is a specific length of time in which a human being decides that a distant engine noise is not their problem. It is longer than it should be. It is usually about 15 seconds. 15 seconds is most of the remaining flight. The terminal phase is a shallow dive. No live operator. No last-second correction from a pilot watching a screen, because there is no screen. Just a flight computer holding a heading and a descent angle onto a coordinate loaded before takeoff, correcting against the inertial solution, closing at well over 150 kilometers an hour with a warhead that does not need a direct hit on a specific dish to end this. At around 1 in the morning, according to Ukraine's general staff, it comes down out of the dark onto the arc of trailers. The warhead does not have to be enormous, and the physics of what happens next has almost nothing to do with the explosive itself. A jamming complex of this type is a machine made of the least survivable materials in modern warfare. Thin sheet metal dish reflectors, waveguide runs, high-power amplifier stages, control cabinets full of circuit boards, and cable harnesses snaking across the ground between trailers. There is no armor. There was never going to be armor. Armor is for things that expect to be shot at, and this thing was parked 120 kilometers back precisely so that it would not be. Fragmentation from a warhead of this class throws steel across the whole arc of trailers. Dish reflectors do not need to be destroyed to be finished. A reflector is a precisely shaped curved surface. Punch it full of holes and bend it out of true and it stops being an antenna. What's left is scrap metal on a frame. The amplifier stages, the parts that actually generate the wall of noise, are the most expensive and most delicate components in the complex, and they sit in cabinets that a fragment goes through like paper. Then the fuel and the generator take over the job. A running generator with a full-day tank next to a fire is not a bystander. Whatever the warhead started, diesel and heavy electrical current finish, and the cable harnesses burn along their length, trailer to trailer, spreading the damage in a way no single explosion could. The result: the antennas, the equipment, and the transport base of an electronic warfare complex used to suppress satellite communications and satellite navigation, destroyed. That is Ukraine's General Staff's claim about the night. No gun camera footage was released. No slow-motion crosshair, no frozen final frame. What exists is a claim from the Ukrainian military, echoed the same morning across Ukrainian outlets, and a hole in the electronic picture over that stretch of Luhansk that Ukrainian units noticed immediately. This loss costs Russia more than the price tag. The money is real enough. A complex in the $1.5 to $2 million range, built in occupied Crimea, delivered forward through a supply chain that is already carrying more demands than it can meet, replaced by taking another one away from a sector that also wanted it. But that's just the bill, and the bill isn't what actually hurts. What actually hurts is the footprint. That complex was covering roughly 20 square kilometers of sky against a satellite network Ukraine uses to hold entire sectors together. Everything inside that bubble was a place where a Ukrainian unit could not rely on its link. Rear command posts, reconnaissance relays, the video paths that let a crew 20 kilometers back watch what a drone sees. When the trailers burned, the bubble did not shrink. It vanished. Some hours later, Ukrainian kit in that sector was simply working again, and the Russian formations on the other side of the line lost a form of cover they had been quietly counting on without ever seeing it. There's a third cost too, one Russian planning keeps failing to price. A crew that operates a high-value electronic warfare complex knows now, in a way no briefing could have taught them, that being 120 kilometers behind the line is not the same as being safe. That knowledge changes behavior. It means shorter radiating windows, more moves, more time spent packing and unpacking, and less time actually jamming. A system that only works when it is switched on and sitting still becomes drastically less useful the moment its operators are afraid to leave it switched on and sitting still. Ukraine does not have to destroy every one of these complexes to blunt them. It only has to make the crews behave as if it might. That behavior change is already visible. This was not a single lucky night. It was the latest in a running hunt. One of these complexes destroyed on the Kerch approaches in June, another on the Black Sea coast weeks later, and now this one in occupied Luhansk. In each case, the pattern is the same. The complex is detected, sometimes by its own transmissions, and it is struck within hours to days. Russia is building a weapon whose average operational life in the field keeps getting shorter, and it is building them at $1.5 million each. Remember the thing that made this flight possible in the first place. The complex's entire purpose was to sever the link between a drone and the satellites above it, and the machine that destroyed it was one of the few types in Ukraine's inventory that has no such link to sever. It flew on coordinates and dead reckoning, threw away its satellite fix when the satellite fix started lying, and finished the run on gyroscopes. Russia has spent 3 years building an answer to Ukrainian drones. Ukraine keeps building drones that do not ask the question. None of the crew on that lot were conscripts sent against their will. Every man on those trailers signed a contract, crossed a border that was not his to cross, and took a paycheck to stand in an industrial yard in Luhansk and switch on a machine designed to blind the country he had invaded. The machine is scrapped now. The wider picture is what the deep rear means from here. 3 years ago, the 100-kilometer band behind the contact line was where Russia put the things it could not afford to lose, the air defense it was not willing to expose, the command elements, the electronic warfare, the fuel. That band has been closing all year kilometer by kilometer, one strike at a time, and every closure forces the same decision on Russian planners. Push the high-value systems further back and they no longer cover the front. Leave them where they are and they get found. There is no third option, and Russia has been out of good answers to that question for a long time. The jammer was supposed to be the answer to the drones. A drone found it. And the dishes that were built to make Ukrainian machines go deaf are lying on a Luhansk hardstand, punched full of holes, pointing at nothing.